Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Yes, sir. Let's start off with a little Eric Clapton for you all out there. Good afternoon, good evening. When you start watching this this interview I'm doing to one of the better hosts on Wire to Wire. Not only is he a host, but he's also the CEO over there. He produces some shows over there on Wire to Wire, and I'm glad to have him. He's one of the best in football I've heard, and I've watched him on a few shows, Coffee and Sports, Sideline to Sideline. I know they got a bunch of shows over there. We're going to get to that too. But let me first bring up Gene. They call him the NFL genius. There's a reason for that. And you're going to find that out as we get going. Good afternoon, Gene. How you doing today?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem, Gene. So, you know, in all my interviews, I mean, we're going to get to your network, which is a very good network. And we're going to get to all the shows you do and everything. But first, I want to talk about little Gene. When Gene was young, when Gene was first starting to get involved in sports. And who was your biggest influence? Was it your family, you know, your uncle, your dad, maybe your mom? I don't know. Somebody that got you involved in sports early, Gene.
It was my dad. Me and my dad took me out playing baseball every day when I was like 5, 6. We did the same routine. He'd hit me fly balls. I would be able to track a fly ball. And then after that, he would pitch to me and I would hit. And then after that, I would pitch to him. So I would work on my pitching. So every day, and this is at the Bridesburg Park in Philadelphia, we'd go out every single day. It was routine. It was awesome. My dad coached me in baseball and, I made high school team and I was good in high school. I was scouted until I snapped my ankle in half. But, yeah, my dad.
I mean, my dad was my biggest influence, too. I mean, he had me in front of it. Now, I'm a Giants fan. My dad's from New York, so it's not all my fault, Gene. I'm just letting you know. I've been a Giants fan forever. I was 4 years old. I'm sitting in front of the TV with my dad watching the Giants. And, of course, he was a Giants fan back when they had Y.A. Till and all those great teams. But I watched them through the 70s as bad as they were. They're pretty bad now, too. I mean, they're maybe bad, more bad this year than they were in the 70s. But I went out, my dad, same thing. Grounders, he threw the football to me. I ended up playing football for 10 years. Ended up blowing my knee out during a high school game when we were on our way to a championship game. Next game was a championship game that I wasn't able to play in. But anyway, I had a great time. I love football, love baseball. Basketball, I kind of played a little bit, but football and baseball were my things. Now, you just said you're from Philly. And Philadelphia is one of the best sporting states. I mean, if Pennsylvania is anyway, and Philadelphia, one of the best sport cities around New York, Boston, Philly, up in here in the Northeast are huge. I mean, Philly's known, of course, for the Eagles and the Flyers and the 76ers and boxing. Huge boxing capital out
Joe
there.
Frazier.
Yeah, my favorite boxer of all time, Joe Frazier. And, I do a show with Jack Hirsch. He's a Hall of Fame boxing writer, and he knows all these guys personally, which is really cool, right? So you get to meet some of these guys. So, yeah, Philadelphia, I always respected their football team. Always like a lunch bucket team. They didn't have a lot of frills and stuff. They come at you with their defense. They'd hit you hard. And not that it's our big rival, and our big rivals is a Giant, but I always respected that team. And this year they're doing it, Gene. I mean, you guys got a shot. So your favorite sport was baseball?
Growing up playing baseball. I always played baseball. I was a really good baseball player. I can admittedly say that as a humble person. I can tell you that I was normally one of the 2 all-stars in the team. I batted 5th behind Tommy Wagner, who went on to play college baseball for North Catholic as a sophomore. I batted .430 my junior year playing baseball. So baseball was my sport. I was very good at it. And, I played a little football, but when I start getting very serious in baseball in high school, they're like, none of that. You're not doing both of these things. You have too much of a future and opportunity. And it's funny because Stanley Orchowski, who started center field for Temple University, he was my protection in the lineup. So before I actually had an ankle injury, starting center fielder for Temple University was my protection in the lineup. So
nice, man. I mean, that's pretty cool. One of my the defensive end that played on our team went on to play nose guard for the Seattle Seahawks, Steve McAlowitz. Dan Kaisha went on to play. He made a pro team practice squad, never started, but we had some really good ball players too. And it kind of makes you feel good, right? You were part of something that other guys went on to play. And what if, right? What if you could have stayed healthy? And it drives you nuts sometimes. So let's talk a little bit about college football first before we get into the pros. I don't know if Penn State is your favorite college football team or not. A lot of guys don't have mine. Mine is Notre Dame because Irish, the Fighting Irish, again, growing up.
Do we have to compete in everything? Is this like Giants, Eagles, Penn State, Notre Dame? Do we have to compete in everything? By the way, Rudy was offsides. I mean, he jumped the step. Let's be honest about that.
Even in the movie, he did. I mean, at least in the movie, you can, But anyway, yeah, you're right. Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. I'm from Irish heritage, so that was a big thing too. I go back to the days of Joe Theismann. I go way back with Notre Dame. So, and of course, Joe Montana came along after that. But Penn State this year, we have a program that's all college, it's a college show. And Penn State really hasn't been able to win the big one as far as against its rivals, right? Michigan, Ohio State, they've had problems beating these guys. So Penn State's in a position that it hasn't been in decades, where it has a shot to win this national championship. If they win this national championship, does that make it good for a coaching staff that, hey, you might have lost against Michigan, you might have lost against Ohio State, but you won the national championship?
Winning a natty is all that matters, right? I don't have much confidence in James Franklin, but what James Franklin has done, he's a great recruiter. He gets top-notch talent in there all the time. And he hired an offensive coordinator, and Andy Koltanicki, who coached for Kansas last year as their offensive coordinator. And what he's done with the development of Drew Auer, with Singleton, with my favorite player on their team, the Katron Allen, they've developed, and obviously they have the best tight end in the nation. So I think what Penn State's done is they've played great defense, big bully ball offense, run the football, don't turn it over, and that's put them in this position. I don't have confidence in James Franklin when it comes push to shove. I do think they beat Notre Dame. I look at Notre Dame as Penn State light, not as good at quarterback, not as good as defense. And listen, although you have a great running back who's a little banged up, I would take our two-headed monster over Julian Love of Notre Dame. So I think Penn State wins the football game versus Notre Dame. But if there's a big spot in this football game where a decision has to be made at the head coaching position, I do not have confidence in James Franklin. I just don't. He's never been that guy. Versus Ohio State, I'll never forget it. You know, we're going toe-to-toe with Ohio State 3 years ago in Penn State, and he calls a timeout to run a QB, a read option QB keeper on 4th and 2 that gets shut down in the backfield. It was the most obvious play call ever, and that ended their national championship hopes 3 years ago. It's been that way with Franklin for a long time. I don't have confidence in him as a play caller, but by him adding Colton-Nickey to the staff, I think he can release the play calling responsibilities to a guy that's proven that he's been doing it for years.
Yeah, Penn State, I've always followed Penn State. One of the coaches, Sean Spencer, who was the defensive line for Penn State, came on I actually interviewed the guy who went on to be with the Giants, and they called him the Dogs or something was the nickname they had for his thing. Of course, Saquon Barkley from Penn State. A lot of great players from Penn State that came out. And Penn State has always had a good linebacker crew, right? Linebacker, you don't want a linebacker.
Linebacker, you.
There you go. There, I froze. Yes, and I know Notre Dame and Penn State, I think, is a pretty even game. I really do. I think Notre Dame's defense is very, very opportunistic, right? They could turn it. They could turn an interception or fumble into a touchdown in a second. That's why I like Notre Dame. I'm not saying Notre Dame wins. I'm saying this. I think that's going to be a good game. Ohio State and Texas. What do you think? I don't think Texas is going to fare too well against Ohio State. Gene.
See, a lot of people are saying that, right? And I do want to give one more compliment to Notre Dame because I remember when Marcus Freeman took over the program, when Brian Kelly basically ran out on them while they still had an opportunity of making the college football playoff. Brian Kelly ran out on him to go to LSU. That's only the second time he's done that in 5 years when he did it to Cincinnati before. Right. I hate Brian Kelly. Just make that clear. I love me some Marcus Freeman. What he's done, I can't stand him. And then he had a fake Southern accent his first interview. Like, I can't stand him. But what Marcus Freeman's done with that Notre Dame group has been incredible. And I root for them. When they're not playing Penn State, I'm rooting for Marcus Freeman and that Notre Dame team. I also love Riley Leonard. Duke kid, talking about 3-star kid, didn't have the opportunity to be this big name quarterback. And it's just done it with grit and determination. Going from Duke over to Notre Dame, I love what Notre Dame's doing. In the Texas-Ohio State game, this is the one thing I've learned about Ryan Day, and this is one thing I've learned about Ohio State. When they have preparation, when they have time to prepare for a football game, they are better than anyone in the nation. Remember 2 years ago when Georgia won the national championship, but on New Year's Eve barely beat Ohio State? It was like 42-41. Ryan Day gets 21 days to prepare for you. He will develop an offensive scheme that could beat you. Here's the difference with Texas. He only has 1 week to prepare for Texas, and Texas can match them in the trenches. Their offensive and defensive line can be able to go up against Ohio State and match them. I think Quinn Ewers is the better quarterback than Will Howard. I just think he is. I do too. When you look at this matchup, the matchup is in Texas. So Texas is going to have that kind of home field advantage. I think they have the better quarterback, and I don't like Ryan Day on short preparation. Look at the games he's lost to Michigan. They get bullied. They get pushed around by teams that can be able to control the line of scrimmage. I actually think Texas pulls the upset here.
Wow. I like Ohio State's speed. I like their defense a lot. Ewers, to me, is up and down. Ewers can look great, and then he can go ahead and throw a couple interceptions. I think Ohio State's defense gets to him, but we'll see what happens. I mean, listen, I think these four teams, I don't know if they're the best four, Gene, or not, because I don't ever think, I don't care what kind of system you get in there, unless you put an NFL system in college, with having divisions, I don't think you're ever going to get a true playoff game, because you're going to get people from the SEC with 2-3 losses, and you're going to have these other guys that have no losses that aren't going to be able to compete with those teams with 3 losses. I think it's going to be hard for them to get something true. But
they need to fine-tune the playoff. They need to fine-tune the playoff a little bit. What Oregon had to do essentially this year was all but run the table They won every game this year, and you know what their reward was? Their first playoff game, they got the most skilled team in the nation in Ohio State.
Yeah.
They got the most skilled team in the nation in Ohio State, and this is something that the College Football Playoff Committee has to look at. The 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds have all been eliminated, so every team that got a bye is gone. So you're sitting now with 5, 6, 7, and 8.
They got to reseed it. You know, after they get it, and the teams, whoever wins or loses, they've got to reseed it, Gene, because it makes no sense for number 1 to be playing number 3 or number 1 to be playing number 2. They got to be playing the lower seeds for it to be fair to the ones that have, you know, the best record. So maybe they'll do that next year. We'll see. So let's get into the pros. I have never, Gene, seen so many bad teams. 5 losses or more, or I should say, or less. I mean, you've got almost, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams, 5 losses, right? 5 wins, sorry, or less. I mean, I haven't seen that. You normally have more teams in the middle, you know, 7 and 8 or 8 and 7, but not this year.
Yeah, this is the most parity. The least parity I've seen in the NFL in years. You have more 14-win teams this year than you've ever had in the history of football. Minnesota won 14 games. Detroit won 15 games. Philadelphia won 14 games. Buffalo won 14 games. And now Kansas City won 15 games with the second loss. But this is the least amount of parity that you've seen in the NFL. And there are a lot of bad teams, right? There are a lot of teams and bad teams will show you. And I don't think they're just bad teams. I think there's a lot of bad organizations that are constantly making the wrong decisions. Like one of the biggest examples I give you of a bad organization is the Chicago Bears. They are a bad organization. And until the McCaskey Callis family decides to sell the team or get the right people there in charge, they're going to continue to be a bad team. I want to kind of just share something with you that I'm sure you know, but it's hilarious to me. This team has drafted a quarterback in their coach's lame duck year 3 straight times. Do you know how stupid it is to draft a quarterback in a coach's lame duck year? They did it with John Fox when they drafted Mitchell Trubisky. They did it with Matt Nagy when they drafted Justin Fields, and they drafted Caleb Williams in the last year of Matt Eberflus. So basically, you're not marrying the coach to the quarterback. A coach comes in and goes, "It's not me, it's the quarterback the last guy drafted." And they keep recycling the process. You can't do that. What happened in Denver is what should be happening in the NFL. Hey, Sean Payton came in. This is not my guy. We'll pay a lot of money to get rid of Russell Wilson. I'm going to draft my guy. Bo Nix was not number 1 on anyone's list. But look the way he played this year under Sean Payton. Bo Nix reminds me of Drew Brees more than any quarterback in this class. Just the way he plays football. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that
I said that in the beginning of the year. They all yelled at me. I said, "Watch out for Bo Nix. He's a little small, but he's accurate, and he can make the middle throws. And you know, watch out. He's going to be a good quarterback." No. I said, "Well, just watch." And I said, "He reminded Drew Brees. He ain't Drew Brees." I know he's not Drew Brees. I'm not saying he's Drew Brees. I'm just saying that he's similar in a lot of things he does, and it worked out this year. So. I agree with you with Chicago, big time. And not only did Chicago get a quarterback in the lame duck year, they're changing GMs too. So as the coach is leaving, you have a GM. They get another coach. They don't like the GM. They get rid of the GM. They get another. It's a mess over there. And you're right. It's just a bad organization that doesn't know how to. They don't have a plan, right? You're just going to go straight ahead. We're not thinking about anything. And I'll tell you right now, I think Caleb Williams is a good quarterback, and they could ruin this guy. I mean, I don't know who they're going to get for a head coach. I don't know if they're going to, they're interviewing everybody. But
did you see the interviews? Did you see the guy? They asked to interview Mike McCarthy. Are you out of your mind? If you not watch football, they're interviewing anybody. I don't understand. It's not just Chicago. Look at what Jacksonville did. They fired Doug. I don't know what information Trent Baalke has on owners, but you remember in San Francisco, they chose Trent Baalke over Jim Harbaugh. How'd that work out for them in San Francisco?
Yes.
Now in Jacksonville, Trent Baalke hires Urban Meyer, one of the worst hires ever, Doug Peterson, and he still keeps his job. How is that possible?
Yes. Well, Peterson has been fired. So
correct. Baalke hasn't. Yeah. They kept Baalke. They retained the GM.
That's who I agree. That's who has to be fired. And speaking of coaches getting fired, I understand that the owner has a right to fire a coach anytime he wants. It's his team. But when you have a terrible roster and you put a new coach, a brand new head coach in there with a brand new staff, with no offensive line, the defense is average to worse than average, no receivers, and what do you expect the guy to do? And what Robert Kraft did, I just don't understand.
So what they're doing in New England is very obvious. If Mike Rabel is not named the next head coach of the New England Patriots, I will be shocked. Yeah. Robert Kraft is, and he went up there and apologized. It's been one of the toughest scenarios. You fired Gerard Mayo at 5:30 p.m. after he won a 1 o'clock game. Right. They didn't even wait till Monday. They were just like, yeah, you won the game. You're gone. Have a good one. Gerard Mayo didn't deserve that. And that's what happens a lot in the league with African-American coaches. And it's the truth. The truth is they'll end up firing a black coach way faster than they'll fire. You look at situations that happen all across the league where African-American coaches have such a shorter leash. And it's not right. You look at what happened in Los Angeles. Brandon Staley got 4 years to fail with Justin Herbert after the last year of Anthony Lynn. Justin Herbert won Offensive Rookie of the Year. It doesn't make sense.
Not at all. I would say the same thing, and a lot of people have a problem with Brian Flores. I don't. I think
he's the best coordinator in football.
I think he was a good coach for Miami too. They're trying to force him to play a quarterback he didn't want to play at the time, and the quarterback's getting injured, and they have a chance to go to the playoffs. I mean, that whole thing was handled wrong. I think Flores, if he stayed in Miami for a couple of years, maybe Miami makes a serious run at a championship.
They had the worst roster in football. They traded Minka Fitzpatrick for a first-round draft pick his first year there. They gutted the roster. He finished 5-11. The next year he was 10-6, and then he was 9-8, and they fired him. And they drafted a quarterback he didn't want. He wanted Herbert. He wanted Deshaun Watson. They gave him neither. They gave him Tua, and the culture in that building was never better than what it was with Brian Flores. He wanted to Fitzpatrick because the locker room was behind Fitzpatrick. I love Brian Flores. You're speaking my language.
Me too. Coaches that are staying that probably shouldn't be staying. Brian DeBall. What are the Giants thinking? I mean, Gene, I don't mind you giving the coach some time. I don't believe in firing the coach, continually firing coaches, right? But you go to the playoffs, and maybe the playoff, we'll say that was lucky. We won some games maybe we shouldn't have won. We get in the playoffs, win the playoff game. Good. Yeah. But then we go to 6-10. And then this year we go down to 3. I mean, we're getting worse. I mean, and Mara coming out saying I'm losing patience. That doesn't say it. It's not saying, hey, these are my guys. This is who we're playing. I don't care what anybody says. I got a lot of faith. He didn't say that. He says I'm losing patience, so they better do better. So what are players going to think? Oh, so they can fire the ball any time now? I mean, it doesn't show no faith in what he's saying he wants. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's funny you bring up the Giants because the Giants are one of the most interesting situations you're going to run into this year. I don't think they're sold on either one of the quarterbacks that are coming out in this class. I don't think they like either one of them. Even though Shedeur Sanders had the New York Giants cleats on, I don't think they're sold on either one. So Brian Dable has shown you what he can do with a bad quarterback with Daniel Jones by taking them to the playoffs year one. I don't think Brian Dable is a bad coach. I think the biggest issue with that team is Joe Shane. You watch him on Hard Knocks and you can just see how incompetent of a GM he is. Like for him to sit in his room with one of his head scouts and question Saquon Barkley, who's going to give him $12 million? And he goes out and runs for 2,000 yards. That guy has more egg on his face than I've ever seen a GM have. That has got to be one of the worst like portrayals of yourself as a GM on a show I've ever seen. I think Joe Shane's the issue. I think the Giants roster's the issue. You look at a lot of those players. How's Andrew Thomas playing? You know, you draft Evan Neal in the first round of the draft 2 years ago. Kayvon Thibodeau, okay, he's played okay. Evan Neal's been awful. Now, you did good this year with Malik Neighbors, but what are they looking at? Their roster is not – they have 3 players, and I went through this the other day. Arguably 3 players on that Giants roster that could compete for a starting position on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Malik Neighbors, Dexter Lawrence, and who? Who competes for a starting job? That roster is just not there. And if you say Okereke, that makes sense, but Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond have played great linebacker.
You know, Gene, they tried to go the free agent route with the line, right? Which I understood. They got the guy from Green Bay. I can't remember his name right now. All pro, very good guard. They went and get the Raiders offensive tackle again. Brain freeze on him. Pretty good offensive tackle. Thomas was playing well till he got injured. I think Thomas is going to be a good tackle eventually. But they don't have an offensive line coach. One thing that Philadelphia Eagles have is the offensive line coach in the league. This guy gets the line ready. I don't see a lot of rookies playing for Philadelphia coming out the draft. They're normally there for a year. They're learning. They take over when the other guys leave. I think that's the strength of the Philadelphia Eagles. Their defensive line is still very good, but their offensive line, Gene, is unbelievable, and you've got one of the best offensive line coaches in the league.
Jeff Stoutland University. That they literally call it Stoutland University. You look at what happened with Jordan Mailata. I want to take you back to the Jordan Mailata draft. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Eagles drafted Jordan Mailata in the 7th round in the same year that they drafted Andre Dillard to be their starting left tackle. Jeff Stoutland got a hold of Andre Dillard and was like, he is soft. He cannot play this position. Jordan Mailata, a former Australian rugby player, drafted in the 7th round, was the number 1, not left tackle, not offensive lineman, the number 1 graded player in the NFL by PFF was left tackle Jordan Mailata. He had a 95.3 rating. This is a 7th round draft pick out of the Australian Rugby League. Cam Jurgens, 2nd round draft pick, Pro Bowler. Landon Dickerson, 2nd round draft pick, Pro Bowler. Lane Johnson, obviously a 1st round draft pick 10 years ago, Hall of Fame right tackle. Mekhi Becton, a guy that was left for dead by the New York Jets, is playing at a Pro Bowl level at right guard. And you see Jeff Stoutland's done an incredible job with that offense.
There you go. And I mean, the Eagles, as long as they keep them, that offensive line coach, I don't know what he makes, but he'd be my highest paid coach. I swear to God, on my staff, he'd be higher paid than Sirianni. I swear to God, he would be. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. So let's talk a little bit about your team, the playoffs coming up. Hurts it with the concussion protocol. Hasn't played, hasn't practiced. Are you worried at all about this? Because if he doesn't play, Jordan Love, we'll see. I mean, he hurt his elbow. Maybe he's good. Maybe they said he's fine. The rustiness from Hurts. I mean, I think this is going to be a great game. I think Green Bay and Philadelphia is going to be a really good game.
I don't. I think Jalen Hurts clears concussion protocol today and practices tomorrow. I think they held him out to be as safe as humanly possible. I think they've really treaded water with clearing concussion protocol for Jalen Hurts. I don't think there's any issues. I think they knew they weren't going to play him the last week of the season, so they drugged their feet with it to make sure he was okay. I don't think this game is going to be as close as people think it's going to be. You look at Green Bay, and the Eagles played this team. They played them in Sao Paulo, Brazil, week 1, and it was a close football game. This was before Cooper DeJean got the start, and Avonte Maddox was cooked by Jaden Reed in the slot. That will not happen with Cooper DeJean. This is also a team that they played in. You guys forget about this game in Sao Paulo. They were playing on a mud pit. There was zero traction in that football game. They were playing literally at one of the worst stadiums you could play at. They're going to play Lincoln Financial Field. That pass rush will get home. And the strength of Green Bay this year has been their running game and their defense. The Philadelphia Eagles are top 5 in run defense in football. I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to be able to give Philadelphia a lot of issues. And if their defense has done a great job against the pass, but where they've struggled is against Aaron Jones and Jahmyr Gibbs against the run versus good teams that have good offensive lines. Saquon Barkley, that offensive line, they are going to be able to control the clock, control the football. And I don't see, with Christian Watson now having a torn ACL, I don't see the Packers being able to move the ball with any type of, consistency or rhythm. And the Eagles are a slow starting team. The way to beat them is to get up 10-0 on them. Get up early. The Packers are also a slow starting team. It's a really bad matchup for Green Bay.
I think so. I think it's going to be a little closer than you think. I really do. I listen. I know if they can keep Love in the pocket upright, when he's hot, he's very good. And their receivers are pretty good too. And the defensive secondary of the Eagles is not the best. And they're good, but they're not the best that I've seen. So I think it's going to be a little bit more closer than you think, Gene. I still think the Eagles win. To be honest.
I avoid Tampa by all costs. I don't want Tampa. That's what I don't want. That's the team that strikes fear in my heart. I don't want to play Tampa Bay.
Speaking of that, the other games, who do you like, Gene, or the NFC?
Oh, I like Tampa. I like the Rams to upset Minnesota. I think that they're playing that. I think that's the worst case scenario for Minnesota. You go 14-3. You lose the last week of the season. Sam Darnold looks terrible in the game. Then you're going to go play Puka Nacua, Matt Stafford. The one quarterback in this NFC playoffs that will be able to have somewhat of a handle on Brian Flores' defense will be Matt Stafford. The other 6 quarterbacks in the NFC have issues with pressure, have issues with the Flores style defense, which is basically an inverted cover 4. Yeah. I think LA upsets Minnesota in LA. I think the Buccaneers beat a highly overrated Washington Commanders team. And I think Philadelphia takes care of business versus Green Bay.
Okay. AFC is interesting to me. There's been a couple teams in the AFC the last few weeks that have seemed to, like, I don't want to say don't want to play. They just look beat as they come on the field. One of those is Houston. I mean, I know Houston for some reason. I mean, I know the injury bothered them, but it just seemed to me when you look at CJ Stroud in the huddle, he doesn't look pumped. He kind of like this, and Houston is I know they won the last one. They had a big running game. I'm not sure if Houston's is gonna do it this year. Gee, a lot of people thought they'd go to championship at least this year. I don't think they're gonna do it.
I didn't. I predicted the CJ Stroud sophomore slump. I thought that adding Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon to a great internal culture wasn't the greatest move. These are 2 notoriously bad culture players. I'm not saying that they've been bad for Houston this year, but I predicted the sophomore slump by CJ Stroud. He was Jekyll and Hyde at Ohio State. A lot of people don't realize that. They see how great of a rookie season he had. But I'll tell you what the NFL does. They adjust. They adjusted to Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had that MVP season in 2017. Defensive coordinators adjusted. They adjusted to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had the MVP-like season in 2021. They adjust. CJ Stroud is no different. You have to learn how to adjust on the fly. And CJ Stroud hasn't done that yet. And they have a great offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. But if that team cannot adjust offensively, I mean, they got beat the snot out of them by Baltimore. That showed you everything you need to see about that team. I don't like the Texans at all. I think the Chargers bully them. I don't think it's a close football game. I love the way Harbaugh's team plays for them. I think that's an easy pick this week.
Do you think the Chargers have a shot, Gene? I mean, this is, you said, defense, running game. Herbert's starting to come alive a little bit. They're letting them throw the ball down the field more. They got a shot. I mean, they're one of those teams that are just solid. I don't know.
Jim Harbaugh's teams play for him, man. And I think I'm going to be very interested to see how they look. And I'm already looking forward how they're going to look at Arrowhead the next week. Because I think Justin Herbert has got the skill. Lad McConkey's came on as one of the best young wide receivers in the league. And they run the football. They have 2 offensive tackles. Control, alt, delete. Patent that. Joe Alt is absolutely a stud at tackle for them. I love the way they play offense. I love the way they play defense. And they're a tough team. They're going to be a tough out.
Buffalo and Baltimore, the 2 teams that haven't made it over the top since they didn't make it in. I don't think they would have done anything anyway. I don't think their defense is good enough. But Buffalo, they got a great passing defense. I mean, they can keep you off the board. They're like top 3 or top 5 in the league. And Baltimore, of course, they've been playing great, but it comes playoff time, and sometimes for some reason, it's like kryptonite to Jackson. So what happens? Does Buffalo, Baltimore have a chance? Well, if they have a chance, do you think this is either one of them do it?
It's funny you say that. I think both of them are running into the worst possible teams to run into in the first round of playoffs. You talked about Cincinnati, but like you didn't think their defense has. You know what Denver does really well is they keep quarterbacks in the pocket. With Patrick Surtain being one of the best corners in football, I think keeping Josh Allen in the pocket is a recipe for disaster. People forget last year, Denver went into Buffalo on Monday Night Football and beat them. That was not nearly as good of a Denver team as the Denver team they're going to play this year. I think that game's a lot closer than a lot of people expect it to be. I expect Buffalo to win, but I would not be surprised if Denver pulled that upset. And then Pittsburgh versus, you look at the last 12 matchups, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson's played Pittsburgh. He's 3-9. So Pittsburgh's not a defense that you want to trot out there at Baltimore. Now, I hope that you see Baltimore versus Buffalo in the next round, because then one of those guys is going to be able to go to the championship game. But I would not be surprised if either one of these lower seeded teams, if a Mike Tomlin team shows up in the playoffs, I think that happens. I think that both of them keep it close. I think you're in for a very exciting wild card weekend. I think these games are closer than you expect them to be, but I expect Buffalo to get over the hump. I still think that for whatever reason, I don't know why I think this. I don't know what makes me think this. I think Kansas City trips up, whether it's versus the Chargers or whether it's versus Buffalo. I just think they trip up.
I can't root against. I mean, I can't pick against Kansas City. I just
It's
can't.
impossible.
There's something about that team. I mean, that's got to be coaching. That's number one, right? It's got to be Andy Reid. Of course, Patrick Mahomes does. It's just something about that team. That team just knows how to win, and people don't understand when you say knows how to win. It's the end of the game. They're going to win. They just know how to do it. They make that catch. They don't kill themselves in penalties. They make that catch. They get themselves in that field goal position. They're just something else. Maybe it is the year Kansas City doesn't get it. Maybe somebody else does.
You bring up Andy Reid, but the one thing that any Kansas City fan will tell you is that defense is a defense. I mean, that team is a defense-first team. Steve Spagnuolo has been incredible for that team. You know, last year they lost to L'Jarius Sneed, who they thought, oh, this is the top cornerback. What did Kansas City do? They just replenish Trent McDuffie. We're just going to go put somebody else out there, and we'll be just as fine. Kansas City defense has been incredible.
Let me tell you, Spags was great against the Patriots, with the Giants when he was a defensive coordinator. Not a head coach. Not a head coach at all. But he is one great defensive coordinator, I'll tell you that.
100%. Agreed.
Let's talk a little bit about basketball and your 76ers, I would imagine, is your team there.
Yes, sir.
You know, of course, between Embiid, you know, and I mean, there's always a drama with Embiid. Guys are 47-35. I think you've won 8 in a row. Where do you see them finishing this year? Are they in the mix, Gene, or are they? I mean, they're going to make the top 10. I would imagine that. Are they a serious contender?
I don't think they're ever going to be a serious contender because the culture of the team is soft. It's just what it is. Like when you think of Joel Embiid, do you think tough guy, like guy's going to battle through? I don't think that. When you think of Paul George, do you think of a guy that's got that grit, that determination, that Jimmy Butler in him, that dog in him? I don't think that. I think the thing that saves it, you know, the funny thing about the Philadelphia 76ers are, I think they have the most talented roster in basketball. A lot of people won't say that. I'm just talking about talent alone. They have 8-9 guys that can play for championship teams, but their culture is awful. That team is soft, and that team has major issues as far as internal chemistry. Tyrese Maxey, one of the youngest guys on the team, has to call out the former MVP, Joel Embiid, for not showing up to work on time. You're supposed to be the leader. Tyrese Maxey is the leader of that team. I hate what Philadelphia is doing.
I love that dude.
Love Maxey. Hate what Philadelphia is doing. Hate how soft their team is. And I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of the Sixers, but I'm not a fan of what this organization's done. You know, Mac, real quick.
What happened to Moses?
One thing I want to bring up is, do you remember the Sam Hinkie, the Sixers tanking days?
The far back I go.
This is 2010, 2015. The 76ers were tanking. They were one of the worst teams in basketball.
Yes.
Sam Hinkie acquired all these assets for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm telling you this. I am not a professional general manager. I'm just a guy that watches basketball. I couldn't have screwed up those picks worse than him. They traded a first-round pick and an extra first-round pick to get Markelle Fultz instead of Jason Tatum. They drafted Jahlil Okafor instead of Kristaps Porzingis. What they did, Ben Simmons was drafted ahead as number 1 overall pick. What they've done with that team, they signed Al Horford to a 4-year, $120 million contract. They maxed Tobias Harris, and let Jimmy Butler walk out the door. You can't screw up an organization worse. It's impossible.
I remember that. Whatever happened to Moses Malone? That's all I want to know, Gene. I mean, talk about a tough guy. Anyway, listen, 76ers, they do have drama. There's a lot of drama there. And I guess, I don't know if a head coach could straighten it out, a good head coach, or if it's just that's the way it's going to be until they get rid of some of these players. I don't know, Gene. Because basketball is different than football. We know this basketball is more a players' league than football is, right? I mean, they pretty much control the strings unless you really got a strong one, and there ain't too many of them out there. So let's talk about Wire to Wire. I got an old Wire to Wire podcast thing. It is now a network, folks, that has a bunch of podcasts on there. We have Coffee and Sports on in the morning, Sideline to Sideline. How many podcasts you got in all right now over there, Gene?
So we have Coffee and Sports in the morning. We have Wire to Wire on Wednesday nights. Tuesday nights is the Meaty Boys, which is on Roku with you guys. It's a wrestling podcast if you're into WWE or AEW. Sideline to Sidelines, an NFL podcast. That's also on Roku. You also have Birds Deep, which is an Eagles-only podcast. And then Coast to Coast Saturday Morning, which is a college football podcast. As a group, we are moving in the right direction on a lot of phases. Facebook just sent us a rising star as far as their online contributors, and we'll be listed as one of those podcasts as suggested to follow, which is great for us. So as a group, we really have a lot of really professional guys between Cottrell, Shally, Black Elmore, Chris, Mo, Brett. There's so many guys. I don't want to I don't want to miss anyone, but it's a great group of guys to be able to work with. We all take it very seriously, on time, professional, and that's what we strive for. Good content.
We have some of your shows on Roku. You have your own YouTube channel too, Gene, right? Am I saying that right?
We do. We did it. It's funny. I wish I would have learned a little bit earlier when we started the podcast that how much more effective YouTube would have been. We started majority on Facebook, and until we got to episode 100, we really didn't get involved in YouTube. Now we got 160, 170 subscribers, which is super low considering the 5,400 we have on Facebook. But I think that the move is to really move towards YouTube and continue to grow the YouTube following. I think that's the future and what we're really working towards. We also have a website now that we've loaded up that has all our recent episodes.
What's your address of your website?
It's Wire to Wire. I'm going to get it for you right now. We just launched it. It's Wire to Wire Sports Podcast.live.
All right. So anybody seeing that, go to Wire Sports Podcast.live. Check them out and see what you can find there, and check out. I'm telling you, check out Wire to Wire. I mean, they're huge on Facebook. Go over, support their YouTube channel. I mean, YouTube channel you can monetize. It takes a lot. You got to get a lot of views. You get a lot of people following, but at least you can monetize that. Where Facebook you really can't. So anyway, Gene, thank you for coming on with me today. I appreciate it. We'll have you on YouTube, our YouTube channel tonight, National Streaming Sports, and we'll also have him on the Roku channel. We have the videos on demand where I interview all the hosts and important people that are on our network, and you can check out this interview again after it disappears. So, Gene, again, thank you. I appreciate you coming in, and keep up the great work over there, Gene.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Appreciate everything that you guys have done for us with the Roku channel. Really, really love working with you guys.